All right, good morning, everyone. My name's Kenny Rose. I'm the founder and CEO at Franshares. And today with us, we have Gordon Liao. Gordon, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Would love to hear your story.
How much time do we have?
Well, we got all day. It's live, but there's no end point.
I'm just playing. I'm just joking. So, first of all, I appreciate you guys inviting me. I always love to talk about this topic. It's a big part of who I am. So, my quick story. So, I grew up on the far south suburbs of Chicago, a place called Park Forest. I grew up like a little different than most Asian kids. My high school class was 47% African American, 53% Caucasian, and me.
Wow.
In the entire class. I was the only non-black or white kid, so people didn't know what to do with me. This was back in the late 80s, early 90s. And so I grew up kind of, so I always put it this way. I was fortunate, I played sports and I was relatively good. So I played on the basketball team, which was almost literally 12 black guys, one white guy, and me. And then I played baseball, which was almost literally 12 white guys, one black guy, and me. And I learned to navigate both locker rooms. Vastly different locker rooms, like hugely different locker rooms, but I learned how to navigate both. And that made me a big part of who I am today, which is like, I know how to be myself, authentically myself, with a lot of different types of people. Because right after my jock period, because I played all the way through high school, senior year of high school, but senior year I was like, all right, I'm not going to be a Division I baseball player, so I had to find something else. And I saw all these like theater people and singers in the choir, and I'm like, naively, I'm like, man, they got they getting all the girls. So I'm like, all right, let me try this. So I got the spring musical lead, I got into theater, I got into singing, and so then not only was I like able to get along with jocks of all colors, but also thespians and people in theater, and my love of the arts really started there. And so you fast forward, I went to Illinois for undergrad. Had no idea what I wanted to do. I'm a child of immigrants, and I just didn't know what I was supposed to do. I was actually undocumented up until like the age of 26. Wow. That's a very long story, but it's not the traditional story of a lot of undocumented immigrants. It's really more I grew up in a white collar household, but my parents didn't do very well money wise, and so long story, like my dad was a diplomat. Never really applied for a green card for me. We filed for bankruptcy, put us in the back of the line. My parents got their green card, but I turned 19, and I'm like, all right, I'm just SOL, like I'm screwed. And so I grew up really like understanding the value of money, and I didn't know what I wanted to do in college, but I knew I didn't want to be poor. Just to be really, really clear, I did not want to be broke ever. So I started working when I was 14. I was a caddy. I started working at theater. I worked as a janitor at public pool. Then I went to college. I went to the state school because I had to pay for it. So I worked, paid, got a little bit of help from my parents, and then changed majors 4 times. I was a broadcast journalism major for the longest time, but when I realized it didn't work, I thought the minute I graduated I'd be an anchor on ESPN Sports Center with Stuart Scott, and I'm like, oh, that's not how it works. Oh, I have to pay my dues, and I was like, okay, no, I can't do this. So I became a finance major, really out of necessity, honestly, because it was the least amount of classes I needed to graduate in 4 years, because economically I needed to graduate in 4 years. So I graduated with 153 credit hours, which is enough credit hours for 2 majors. Jeez. But I had 1 major, and I took the core minimum of finance classes to get it. So I got super lucky. I got into investment banking. To this day, have no idea why. There's a professor, it was BA 210. He, after class one day, had an overhead projector, put up about 20 names. My name was on it. He said, these 20 people meet me after class. To this day, I have no idea why my name was on there. I mean, I did well in school, blah, blah, blah. And he's the one who introduced this group to bulge bracket investment banking, basically Wall Street, because a lot of the investment banks didn't come to recruit on the Illinois campus. And so I paid my way up here to Chicago and interviewed, got a whole bunch of stuff wrong. I interviewed in a double-breasted olive green suit. My hair was like longer than it is now. Thankfully, I didn't wear my 4 earrings that I wore in college, but I somehow got a job, and that was my introduction into investments, finance, et cetera, et cetera. So I did that for 2 years. Everybody seemed to be doing this private equity thing, so I applied for a private equity job at this firm because I wanted to do entertainment investing. I thought that was really cool, and I had this interest in the arts. I got into this firm called Windpoint Partners. Only then, after I started, I realized they made that investment 10 years ago, and they don't do any media or entertainment investing. So I moved to Detroit for a year, got into really understood private equity, which is basically acquiring businesses. And that's when I first started. And then I moved back to Chicago because I wanted to try my hand at a .com. That was a disaster. And then I would say one of the most pivotal moments in my life and career was when I joined a firm founded by a friend of mine who was with me at Windpoint Partners, the first private equity firm. His name is Thomas Darden Jr. He started a firm called Reliant Equity Investors. It was an all minority owned private equity firm. I was the first junior guy. And that was when like my passions personally and not being broke came to one, and I just had like basically the epiphany of what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, which was, and then I'll talk about it later, and I'll be a lot faster after this. So at this private equity firm was like my family. Like everybody grew up like me, and we were super diverse, but we all wanted to make money. And so our whole thesis was, well, let's invest and go buy companies, but let's promote underserved communities and put them in positions of power, in positions of relevance, where you can actually make a difference, run a company, run it well, make a lot of money, set an example for the community, et cetera, et cetera. And so I decided to apply for business school while I was there. And I basically, in my application, I laid out my mission in life. My mission in life is to prop up underserved, under-resourced communities. For me, and this is, I guess, very anti-current administration, but I don't really care because I don't work in the administration. For me, that means African-American, Latino, Asian-American, women, the LGBTQ community. I wanted to do it in two different ways. One is through wealth creation, professional development, and overall entrepreneurship. And two, just because of my love of the arts, I wanted to do it through the arts, primarily performing arts, theater, film, music, et cetera, et cetera. And so I applied to business school, got into Harvard, and went to business school for 2 years. It was 2 of the best years of my life. Harvard is like this magical place. And I thought at first like I would go and I'd not meet anybody like me. It was just this, just arrogant, Ivy League, whatever, like all these people that I used to make fun of, or at least in my head. And I realized there are actually a lot of people like me. And so I met so many great people. And then I graduated. And so then did 10 years of private equity, was back at that old firm. Unfortunately, we couldn't raise another fund during the Great Recession. I went to a very non-diverse firm called Baird Capital, but learned my craft. I built a network. I learned how to buy businesses and make them better. And so in 2015, I left because that was always the plan, because I'm a very entrepreneurial guy. People ask me all the time, like, why'd you leave like a super secure, prestigious job to go do your own thing? And I was like, because I knew, number one, I had my mission in life, but then two, like I knew eventually I had to wake up every morning and do whatever the F I want to do. Like there's just no way to get that out of my personality. Like I need freedom. I need to do what I want to do. And that comes through sometimes in personal relationships, because it's not always that's not how it always works. But I'm working through that. So I started Promise Holdings in 2015. At first was just what we call an independent sponsor. We do private equity deals, but on a deal-by-deal basis. So instead of raising a fund, you raise the capital to go acquire a business one at a time. And since then, we have acquired 24 companies. Starting in 2020, we've closed 18 acquisitions. So in the past 5 years, we've closed 18 acquisitions. That's in 9 what we call platform companies and 9 add-ons that we did to combine or merge with those companies. And so right now, our portfolio is about 12 companies. It's all consumer focused, so most of them are in food. But we also co-own Akira, which is it started locally. It's a fast fashion retail business here in Chicago that has grown now to almost 40 stores. across 13 cities, about 140 million in revenue. When it first started, it was a 1,500 square foot store in Bucktown in 2002. I came in 2015 when we were only 30 million, only in Chicago, about 16 stores. So now, we're in Miami, Baltimore, New York, Houston, everywhere. And we're looking to expand more. So we invest in food, fashion, fun, and the future. So we call that food and beverage, fashion and beauty, entertainment and leisure, and consumer technology. Our mission, aside from making a lot of money, is that we strive for 50% of our management teams to have at least one person of color or woman on the management team. We're at about 35%, so we have some work to do there, which is something that we got to do, but that's our stated goal. There's a lot of other things we're doing. There's a lot of things we're doing. So let me stop there. I could go on and on.
Honestly, I prefer you do. This is really great. And I love so many things about the store. One of the first things I love asking people is, how old were you when you got your first job? And
14.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you said that, I'm like, it's not surprising because I think people learn that work ethic really early and start applying it to more and more places. You learn anything early, you keep carrying it on throughout life. And it's amazing how everything really came full circle because you came from like such a diverse area within a diverse area and then started applying all these different principles to your way of investing. So it's really great. And honestly, congratulations on all the success you've had already. And I'm sure a lot more to come. That's great. So when you first got back into investing, like what early experiences sparked your conviction that like made that a core driver for your investment thesis?
Made what a core driver?
Having diversity.
I think I answer a lot of questions by basically, there's like one generic answer a lot of times is that I make a lot of decisions in business because of my personal life, my personality. Like I'm a firm believer the richest people, the most successful people are the ones that are authentically themselves as much close to 100% of the time as possible. This is an old adage, like it's a cliche, but it's true. Like do what you love, because when you love something, it's not work. And when you're really into it, it doesn't matter how much you make. And then that means you're really good at it and you have passion for it, and the money will come.
Yeah.
Unless you have terrible luck or you make some mistakes. But most of the time, that's what happens. So like for me, to answer your question, like it's just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
Like and again, like I'll just give a bunch of examples, right? Like to answer your question in a tangential way, which is I invest in 4 categories that I mentioned because I love food, I love to look good, and I love to have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I love food. I eat at like a friggin' hole in the wall. Like I was in Mexico City last weekend and we had very unsanitary street food. It was amazing. The next day we went to a 2-star Michelin restaurant. It was crazy expensive, but it was amazing. Wow. Both experiences I love. So I just love food. I love to cook, all that stuff. I love fashion and beauty because I love to look good. And I just love the creativity of fashion designers. I love fun. I love film. I love theater. I love music. I've done music myself. Like I've written screenplays. I just love the creative process. And so when you're creative, like by nature, it has to be diverse. Like if you want to see and feel like life, you can't just stick to like one city even or 1 square mile. You can't just stay with people that look like you. Like if you really want to experience true creativity, you're like going around the world as much as possible. Like my goal is to go to 150 countries before I die. I'm only at 40, but like I love diversity, like just because. And so I made a real decision when I was 22. So park that. That's like one bullet. I just love diversity because that's just who I am. I love creativity. I love differences. I love meeting people. That's one bullet to answer your question. The second bullet was going back to being authentically yourself. When I was like 22, 23, my first job, I'm like, man, this is exhausting. Why am I exhausted? It's like, because there's 2 Gordons. There's like work Gordon and then there's personal Gordon. And I'm like, this is dumb. Like, it's like, why? I just looked at the world, I'm like, why is it? And I was like, you know what? At some point in my career in life, I'm just going to be one Gordon all the time, 100% of the time. And so my point is like being kind of my earlier point, like being authentically yourself. Like if you're authentically yourself, then, and if I'm authentically myself, that's the second bullet. And I go back to that first bullet where diversity and like creativity and seeing all these differences, if I have to meld those two, if I'm really being true to myself and being really, really happy 100% of the time. So that's when I'm like, all right, well, I knew I had to find a way to meld the two together, my two loves. And it was when I had that job at Reliant Equity Investors, and they're all my like best friends now. And I just said, oh man, this can work. Like I am truly myself with these guys. And a lot of it's because of where I grew up and how I grew up in a diverse environment. I'm just more, at the time in my mid-20s, I was more comfortable in diverse environments versus like, a non-diverse environment. Now, like 20 years later, like I'm comfortable anywhere because I'm just like, I love all types of people. And so when I realized that I can get rich and still hang out with people I love, that was like when the epiphany hit me. I'm like, if I can do this, a lot of other people should be able to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a long-winded answer to your question.
That's really interesting because so we really promote diverse entrepreneurs in a very, like I arrived there in a very different way. I wasn't surrounded by a ton of diversity, but it was really my first Juneteenth. Really great friend of mine, Carlton, it worked his way up through the worst parts of Philly, got a full ride to Penn State, and now Amazon sends him all around the world, and he's very deep in systems with them. And Juneteenth had come around. This is like my first Juneteenth. It was a lot of people's first Juneteenth, and I called him. I said, "Hey, I posted the black square, but like that doesn't actually change anything. How do I make some actual change?" And he said, "Invest $100 in a black-owned bank." And I was like, "That I love." And we kept talking. I was thinking about what we were creating with FranShares and making it possible to like get funding from people by having others invest in you. And I thought about Chick-fil-A, and most people don't know it should cost $2 million to own a Chick-fil-A, but instead it's only $10,000 because you have to get the experience, work your way up, really prove that you're that person, and then they basically fund the rest for you. And so I realized like what I was doing is like, oh, you're actually creating access to capital for people who don't otherwise have it. And so to me, that's a very big part about investing in diverse owners, is creating that opportunity that was never there for them before. And like much in America, you're told you can work really hard and get the American dream. It's not as true anymore. Like you need capital to like really get there because so many things are walled off by these barriers. So I'd love to go into kind of like your first leap of faith investment into a founder. Walk us through the first time you made a big call on them. It's like outside from your usual network. And what'd you wrestle with? What surprised you really most once the company took off?
Yeah. First of all, I love what you're doing with
Thank you.
FranShares, like just totally separately. Like I think it is awesome.
Thank
It's
you
doing
so
exactly
much.
what you're saying. I think it's a great idea, number one, but two, your added view on diversity, because you're exactly right. When you open it up to these small amounts, like, I think it's awesome.
Thank
you. So we should talk more about it, like offline.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's awesome. I would love to help.
Appreciate that.
So good question. From a pretty early adult age, at least in my investing career, I always thought about like, I always, I guess, there's a paradigm in a lot of America, and unfortunately it's getting exacerbated in this administration, that non 6'2" white male can't, they're not the ideal leader. And that's changing. It's changing over the course of this generation and stuff. But for me, like, it was pretty, because of maybe where I grew up and just being like, I was exposed to strong, successful examples where that wasn't the only potential leader. It was pretty natural for me to not have that bias. And I mean, look, I'm not sitting here saying like I think almost every single person in the world has some type of bias. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm a perfect person. I never had biases. I mean, I have biases too because of society. But from a diversity perspective, like I feel like I never had to overcome biases with respect to leadership and competency and running a business. Like to me, it's very much at the end of the day, and this sounds really capitalistic, but like it is what it is. Like I embrace who I am. Like it is about the numbers. Like at the end of the day, like we still need to make money. Like our mission and our vision won't succeed if we don't grow companies and grow them well, and build and grow EBITDA. So in our business, like it is pretty, I think it should be relatively easy to not have biases. And so to answer your question, like, was it a leap of faith for me when I first invested in a diverse CEO? Not really, just to be honest with you. Like, because, and that's why I gave you all this background, because I just didn't think it was. Now, just to give you like a tangible example though, like we have a Cuban frozen food business. It's in Tampa. Not every single person in the company speaks Spanish as their first language, and we only have like 5 English speakers, honestly. And we needed to make a change at the CEO level for a lot of different reasons. And we have co-investors in all of our deals, and a lot of people were like, does this person have to speak Spanish? I'm like, there's a little bit of a debate, like, do they need to be Latin, and all these things. And I'm like, of course they need to be Spanish. Like it's just Spanish speaking, because like, number one, it's a Cuban frozen food business, and our thesis was to go acquire other non-Mexican Latin businesses. Like we just bought a business and merged it with it that makes empanadas, which is more of a South American, staple. So I'm like, this person has to be of the Latin culture, and of course this person has to speak Spanish. And so we found this executive, and we went like months and months. Like we were getting a lot of pressure because it's not super easy to find everything else that you want. Like somebody that's been a CEO or at least been in a similar position, that's got corporate training in a lot of respects. It's the right age, the right temperament, et cetera, et cetera. We found him. His name is David Martinez. He's Cuban American. Grew up in the Bronx. Like he's just like, you want to be in the trenches with him. But it was a long search. Like I think we started in like January. He didn't start until the end of August.
Wow.
And so, but we stuck to our guns, and it's proven out. So I just think for all of us who are like very really focused on this, on diversity in a lot of different ways, access to capital, investing, as well as like in leadership, you just got to stick to your guns, and just got to like you said, take a leap of faith. It's not always gonna work. Sometimes it's gonna fail. I have just to be clear, I have had examples where I did take a leap of faith on a diverse executive, and it didn't work out. And so I have, that has happened. But of course that happens in non-diverse environments all the time. So we just got to keep going. That's what I like to say.
100%. We're members of the Prosper Forum, which is kind of like the Davos Forum, but for creating minority and diversity advancement in the franchise world. And the thing is, like, you have to create the opportunities there. A lot of people just think like, there's one archetype of who's going to be in the leadership positions. It's like, no, there shouldn't be. You just have to create the chances for people in order to like really gain that opportunity. And that's honestly what someone like you is doing. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Love that.
Let's see. Whether it's that one or another type of deal, is there a time where a diverse founders had like a specific niche, or like pointed out something different that their background was able to bring about a specific change?
That's a good question. I guess probably the easiest thing would be to. Oh no, I'll bring up a very, very recent one. So we have a portfolio company that's in the produce industry. So we buy garlic, ginger, shallots, and a whole bunch of other produce from all around the world, like Spain, China, Peru, Argentina, Mexico, Egypt, Chile. And we need to make a change. The founders were not diverse, but like a lot of companies in this space, like 90% of our workforce is Spanish was their first language. So very similar, but to the first story, but this one was a little bit more of a leap of faith, because you can argue that you don't have to have a Spanish-speaking person run a company like that. But again, we insisted that this person be at least Spanish-speaking, maybe not necessarily be of Latin culture, but we insisted that this person has to be fluent in Spanish. So we found this amazing guy. He grew up in Mexico and married that. And never been a CEO, has an accent when he speaks English, And we took a leap of faith. We said, this is our guy. Like, this is the guy. And he has transformed the business, like completely transformed the business. I mean, the business was doing pretty good already, but he's really changed the entire culture and dynamic. Wow. Because we source from a lot of Spanish-speaking countries, meaning we buy garlic ginger shallots from a lot of Spanish-speaking countries. And before, because we would go with our former CEOs and the founders to these trips, and I'm like conversant in Spanish, but I'm not fluent. But every time we went, we had to bring a translator, and do all this stuff. And like it's harder to build a true rapport when you can't speak the same language. Yeah. It's not impossible, of course. Like for example, there's couples that get married that don't even speak the same language. I get it. Like, I'm not sitting here saying you have to, but like the fact that our guy Adrian, his name is Adrian Almeida, he can speak fluently. And every time we go anywhere, whether Spain, we've been to Spain with him, Argentina, Peru, like anywhere he goes, like he can really build a true bond and a true relationship. And he's just totally transformed the dynamic we have with our suppliers. And internally in the culture of the business, he's completely changed it as well, because he can speak fluently to all of our workers, whether it's like from like the hourly packaging guy all the way up to our head of quality, who's native Spanish speaker as well. And so he's just totally changed the dynamic of the business. So that's probably the best example.
That's a really great example, and it's both like what the business does and the culture within it, which are both huge parts. So that's really great, and you definitely want people who are representative of the company that are from the same culture as the rest of them. That's really great. So your foundation's fellowship has fast-tracked underrepresented talents into the investment arena. Can you share one standout founder's journey?
So my business partner, so to be clear, like I think what you're talking about is the Twigo Foundation. So the Twigo Foundation, it's not my foundation, just to be super clear. But it's a really cool foundation that was set up to promote minorities graduating from business school and going into the finance field. It was started in the late 80s because there weren't as many minorities in investment banking or private equity or venture capital. It was very similar to an organization that's gotten like a lot of unfortunate bad publicity, which is SEO, Sponsorship for Economic Opportunity. The SEO program promoted minorities but out of undergrad, into investment banking and consulting and these types of things. So Twigo was meant to do that, but for business school students. So I was part of the program. My business partner, Jacqueline Brooks, also was part of the program. That's how we met. So I think she has a great story, so I'll highlight it. So like, Jackie was born and grew up in Memphis, had no examples or role models that do what we do or even close to what we do. And also, unfortunately, grew up in an area where, this was the 80s and early 90s where, the drug, crack and cocaine was just an issue. And so she grew up in that environment, unfortunately. But she made it out. She was just super, super determined. Made it to Howard on a full ride. Just like hustling, like just really, really hustling. Like, that's the other thing, real quick aside, like, I get this question a lot. It's like, oh man, you were so determined. Like, how did you like, and Jackie and I always talk about this. Like, it's not like we had, like, we woke up and said, I'm gonna make it. It's like, you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do? Like, I was like 14. I'm like, I want to buy clothes for school. And my parents like, no, we have enough food to like, so you're not starving. Like, because my parents, to their credit, like I was never starving. Like I always had great meals, but they were like, we got no money for clothes. So I'm like, all right, I want some clothes to go to school. And so I'm like, how do I do that? I have to get a job. Okay, let me go get a job.
Yeah.
Let me go ask around. What are you doing? What are you doing? It's not like, it's just what you have to do. You know what I mean? Like when you want to live a certain life, you just like, it's just one step in front of the other. And anyways, so that was hard, right? Like, so my point is like, she was like, I want to go to college and I can't afford it. So I need to go get a full ride. So what do? Like, I'm going to hustle.
Yeah.
So that's what she did. So she went to Howard. Did really well. Obviously, came out investment banking, and things like that. And then getting really private with her, but hopefully she doesn't mind. She found out that she was pregnant a week before college graduation, and so she had this job in investment banking. If anybody knows anything about investment banking, it's like you're not like you're working like 80, 90 hours.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if there's probably less than 1% of investment banking analysts that have a kid around the world. And so she did it. She worked through, and long story short, like
Wow.
she just like went through. Then she went to Vanderbilt for her MBA, and we connected in 2008, reconnected in 2019, and then became business partners shortly after. So
That's amazing, and I really love that. The hustles it's to take you somewhere. It's not just like I really want to do it. It's I have to do it.
Right. Exactly. It's not even a choice.
Yeah, I mean, I worked. Like I said, I got my first job when I was 12, and I've been working ever since.
Exactly.
And it's like going through school, and I went to San Diego State, and it's just like, I was the ramen guy because that's what I could afford. And I think just like that like that need to be able to provide for myself and like get through it is what kind of created that urgency or hustle to like keep it going the rest of your life too.
Exactly.
You mentioned like you got to make money, but also you want to have an impact. How do you balance those two? Like looking at investment, like, hey, this isn't going to make us as much, but it's going to have a real driver to the community. So how do you try and do both?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna lie to you. I might have a slightly different perspective on that. Maybe some people would call it controversial. I just don't think that's mutually exclusive. I've never done an investment where I said, "Oh, I'm gonna take a lower return," even though it's diverse. Like I just feel like when we say that, I think we're not doing enough research or we're not pushing hard enough. It's kind of like what I said about David, our CEO, and everybody on the board was like, just settle, like, no, remove Spanish speaking and the Latin culture from the criteria. Like, and I was just like, and it wasn't just me, so I'm not taking all credit for it, but I was just like, no, I'm adamant, like, this is what's going to drive the business forward. We're just going to keep going. We're going to keep finding, we're going to keep searching. There's freaking 350 million people in the US. Like, we're going to find somebody. We will find somebody.
Yeah.
And so my view is like, this sounds like a cliche, but I believe it, which is like investing in diverse America is not investing in diverse America, it's investing in America. That's where America is going to be. That is it. We're already there.
Yeah.
So we have investment in Asian frozen food business, a Cuban frozen food business, a sausage business that 66% of our consumers are African American or Latino, and it's because it's good business. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like. Yeah. Economic power of minority populations is going to continue to grow. It's an underserved community because a lot of mainstream America still hasn't caught up or figured out how to market to, Latinos, Asian Americans. Like, there's just a disconnect. And so to me, like, I firmly believe that everybody, well, I won't say everybody, but like, most people in this country want to make money. They can.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, not everybody has a hustle like we did, right? So that's the problem. But if you don't want to make like crazy amount of money and put in the work, it's okay. Like that's your choice. Mm-hmm. But I do firmly believe that people want to make money, and so like when we say we want to like invest in diversity, like we don't take a haircut on our returns. Mm-hmm. Like it's just I'm just a core belief of who I am. I think it's just we have to get people in the right environments so that people have the hustle like we do. A lot of people actually have the hustle like we do. The problem is that they didn't grow up with opportunities or role models or examples to see that, oh, my hustle can actually turn into something like really, really wealth. Like my hustle can turn into wealth. Yeah. And I think that's probably like the disconnect that I think we need to work on. And access to capital is one way. Yeah. Right. And honestly, just like talking to entrepreneurs, I always talk to as many entrepreneurs as I can, especially when they're young. It's just being exposed to what's possible is sometimes can change lives. Like for me, that was exactly right. Like again, I was just putting my one foot in front of the other. I wanted to work so I could buy clothes, so I could be kind of cool and like actually like feel confident about myself. And it just led to something else, and then like it led to something else. Like I remember the first time I was in investment banking, we did 6-week training in New York, and it was my first time in New York as an adult. And I remember talking to this woman. She was talking about the Hamptons, and I was like, I'd heard about it. I was like, oh, the Hamptons. Oh, that's where the rich people live, right? And she looked at me. She was like, rich people? Because she clearly had grew up a lot more wealth than I did, and I was like, oh, I guess like I'm with rich people right now. I'm like, and then when I went back to the office and I found out like these guys who were my bosses, they were making like a ridiculous amount of money. I'm like, they're not any smarter than me. I'm like, oh. And so that's the exposure that I feel like a lot of diverse America isn't exposed to, but they have the hustle, they have the drive, they have the intelligence. That's just we got to get them that exposure in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and that's what I appreciate about the franchise industry is that there is a lot of diversity in leadership and ownership because honestly, especially rewind the clocks 20, 30 years ago, it was a cheaper way of getting into business. And like you had this blueprint and it was really how far your hustle and drive can take you.
Exactly.
I'm curious how you've gone about I guess talking about your investment strategy because some people can see it as like, hey, we lead with diversity, and they can almost see it as like being woke or just like, oh, I'm gonna do this to only get diversity and not worry about returns. Because I've talked about like access to capital, but honestly, we don't really promote the diversity aspect because I think some people can see it as, oh, we're not going for the best deals, we're going for the most diverse deals.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like how you talk about that to get investors interested in what you're thinking, but also understanding that you can do good and make good too.
Yeah, the core answer to that would be what I just said before, which is I just don't think it's mutually exclusive. Right? I am not sacrificing returns to invest in diversity. We promote diversity as a value creation tool. Like to us, we think it's a differentiator. We get access to deals, and we get access to deals that not everybody else would, or mainstream America wouldn't. For example, these 3 ethnic food businesses that we have, we're looking at ethnic hair care business right now. A lot of it's just because there's not that many African American women in our industry, and so both of us together, like, we're pretty much perfect for that type of business. So, like, I would just say our diversity is a differentiator, not just because of access to deals, but also the relationships that we build with the entrepreneurs that we meet. And it's not just your traditional diversity. We have businesses that we've, acquired from Trump voters in Florida. We have friends. I mean, just to be clear, I'm a political independent. I've just never voted Republican, but I refuse to be labeled a Democrat because I just don't feel like I feel like they've taken for granted the votes of many minority Americans, especially Black Americans. But we have friends that are Trump that were Trump voters, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because we have a lot of political differences, but at the core of it, they're also just trying to make it. Like a lot of our friends that came from that ilk, I mean, they grew up with nothing either. And so I'm saying that to say 2 things. One, we lead with diversity. And oftentimes we build relationships with diverse or non-diverse people because we're diverse. Because we're authentically ourselves. Like we don't say like we don't when I say we have these friends and partners and people that we bought businesses from that are very not like us. We're not faking it. Like we're very like this. I have these conversations with them, and they actually I think appreciate that because they don't have a lot of friends that look like us, or they didn't grow up with like diversity like we did. And they're realizing also that like at the core of it, we have probably like 10 to 15% of things that we vehemently disagree on. But like 85% of people are actually still like pretty similar. And so like So this might sound like a very different, not what you expected, and to answer your question, but I will say like diversity also cuts in that way. Like when you embrace who you are and just are authentically yourself, and then you're not afraid to be yourself, even in non-diverse environments, arguably hostile environments, that actually sometimes also works in your favor, because people actually respect that you're that way.
Yeah.
And if they're intelligent people, then they will respect. Now, of course, that's a totally different topic. You know, there's a lot of voters on both sides, I would say, on the extremes that are not necessarily, you know, logical. But that's a totally different topic. I'm not going to go there. So anyways, we lead with diversity because it's a differentiator.
Awesome. Well, I've really enjoyed all of this conversation. For investors that are tuning in and they like agree with these principles, what do you think is like the simplest move they can make to get started?
Well, I think what you're doing is really, really, really cool. So like, investing in something like you're doing, I think is awesome. If I wanted to go a step further, like get financially literate.
Yeah.
One of the most important classes that people always talk about taking is accounting. It's a terrible class when you're like 20 or 19 or 21. It's like the worst class possible, honestly. But you'll thank yourself later.
Yeah.
You will thank yourself later. Just be financially literate, honestly. I would say it's really important to be financially literate. The other thing is, whatchamacallit, like favor or remember profits, not just revenue. Okay, like everybody talks about sales, but like, you know, if it costs you like $102 to make $100, like that's not good.
Yeah.
Okay, like profit. It's all about profits. And then the third thing I'll say is all about people. Anytime people ask me like what's the secret or whatever, like I always say it's about people.
Yeah.
I've invested in good people. I spend way more time focused on somebody's background and their personality and what they went through than the financials. Like of course I have to do a lot of diligence and work on the financials, but like the most important thing that me and Jackie, my partner, can do is focus on hiring the right people, always. If something goes wrong, if I have a bad investment, I've had bad investments, people ask me what happened, what went wrong, what lessons you learned, it's always I made a bet on the wrong person.
Yeah.
Or I didn't do enough diligence on this person. It always comes down to that. It's about people.
So true. That was actually an early learning with Franshares too, as we were launching and talking about these great brands that were out there, and people were asking who's running it. I'm like, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And so, you know, as we launch more things, it's like I always say we're selling three things. It's the brand, the operator, and the opportunity. Right. And so we highlight who's running the business, what their experience is, and also like getting them on camera so like you can build a connection with them, because you know, you could have a McDonald's, but you could run a McDonald's into the ground if you're the wrong person. Right. And so, like, I completely agree. You're investing in people.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate the
Thank
time.
you.
Thanks so much
for
coming
Thanks for having
by.
me.
Yeah.
This is great.